We want to spend time chatting about the AJ Armstrong murder trial. Some interesting developments unfolded in court on Thursday. Maybe you've seen the new way we're reporting on this case. We're calling our coverage of the case The Bench. It runs the gamut from in-depth live analysis with criminal trial experts to video shorts breaking down the court process. Jason Wynn, a producer on The Bench, is here this morning to talk about what happened inside the courtroom Thursday. Jason, I understand The Bench actually became the focus of jury selection.
It did at the beginning. It was kind of interesting for me because we were about 3 jurors in, and one of the first things that comes up is, have you watched any of the trial? Do you have any prior knowledge of the trial? Well, this juror, on Monday, there was a second panel that was called in. And when we talk about panels, there's 65 to 75 jurors that they call in at a time. We already went through one panel of 74 jurors. This is the second.
How much time does that take, roughly?
It could take days. We're talking about 4 days, 5 days. It really kind of depends on how the process goes.
And how they answer the questions.
Well, there's that, and there's the hiccups between the lawyers, because every once in a while you'll get a motion, and then they'll have to send the jurors home because the judge has to hear that motion for whatever reason that may be. But yesterday, during the second panel of jurors, now we're into individual voir dire, and that's where they actually get to question and talk to these people about their feelings on a one-to-one basis, like we're doing right now. And some of these questions, are basic. They're like, tell us about your life. It's really open-ended, and that can go anywhere, right?
I was born.
I was born. I was a native of Houston. I went to this high school. I'm a gun owner.
But that's what they're looking for.
They're looking for those little itty-bitty details so they can figure out who you are. But by the end of it, the judge was like, "Do you have any knowledge?" Well, this juror, she on Monday said she did a deep dive. And they told her to hold off until individual voir dire. Well, she came up and the bench popped up because she was like, I was at home on Monday. I was watching KPRC2, and I'm paraphrasing right now. And she was like, I'm watching KPRC2, and they didn't start the newscast the normal way. It was fascinating.
And this is exactly what we did.
And we literally, and I was surprised,
So walk us through what you're doing at this point. Where are you sitting? Are you in the courtroom?
I'm in the back. I'm in the back row, in
You're perking up at this point?
No, I kind of knew. I kind of knew that this was going to be a discussion because I got a heads up earlier, and I was just like, what's going on here?
Where does the heads up come from?
The heads up comes from folks in the courtroom, and they're like, hey, there's a couple jurors that's going to talk about media. And then you kind of listen for those cues. There's other jurors that they talk to. There was quite a few parents on these panels, and quite a few parents, they had to talk about their kids. And would they be able to separate themselves
from what's
actually happening? And one grandmother was like, I see my kid up there. I can't, and those are reasons for cause. So they strike you. And this is all during the voir dire process, which, is a very important process in this whole thing, because if they don't get the right jury, the trial will just keep going.
And as we know, this is the third trial for this gentleman, for AJ Armstrong. And so the jury selection is very specific this third time around.
Yes, it is. It's not specific as in race, creed, politics, or anything along those lines, but it is specific in questioning, because there's a lot of things
they want to make sure they're getting the people.
But they want to make sure that people can follow the law. At the end of the day, because we're talking about, reasonable doubt. And beyond reasonable doubt, and that's kind of what the prosecutors have to prove. They have each juror, their reasonable doubt could be anywhere. Your reasonable doubt could be different than mine, and how does that play?
Okay, so one of the words that you keep, one of the terms I should say, you keep bringing up is voir dire, right? Some people say voir dire, some people say voir dire, right?
Texas thing, you know, you can change things around.
Okay.
That's what I mean. We do hint onto that.
Yes.
So,
but this is the interview process. That's the name of this interview process that we're talking about. One of the features of the bench is a playlist of video shorts that explain legal terms just like this. And we want to show you one of them right now. Full disclosure, if you watch KPRC 2 Plus now, this show at 8, Monday through Friday, we were supposed to show you this video a couple of days ago, but we had some technical difficulties, so we're going to show it to you now. Take a listen.
You've probably heard attorneys talk about voir dire, or voir dire if you're from Texas. But it's actually French for to speak the truth. And it is critical in the criminal justice system. It's a process the judge and attorneys use to identify potential jurors and witnesses. But it ends with an oath committing to speak the truth. Attorneys will ask prospective jurors things like, have you ever served as a juror? Yes? Was there anything difficult about it? Do you know the defendant or know anyone who may know them? And some of the questions can get pretty personal, too. Like, what is your stance on the death penalty? Have you participated in any organized protest? Has your wife or your husband participated in any organized protest? This is also attorneys can figure out if a person's able to set aside their biases in pursuit of the truth. Attorneys are able to strike a juror from consideration, but there is a cap on that depending on the type of case. Like we talked about in our previous video, the ultimate goal here is to have jurors decide cases based on the facts, that the person did or did not commit the crime beyond a reasonable doubt.
That was Joel Eisenbaum you just heard hosting the bench, calling for comments at the end of that video. We have several other video shorts just like that one you can watch and comment on as part of our coverage. Again, the bench, we are very familiar with seeing Rowan as part of the bench. Yes. Joel, of course. Jason is a producer on the bench. What has this process been like for you? This is a completely different way of approaching coverage for a case that has several obstacles. So this was our way of thinking outside the box, bringing the viewers into the courtroom without being allowed to bring cameras into the courtroom.
And that the jury's still out on that question right there, because we could still bring in cameras. It's all up to the judge and what Judge Johnson wants to do, and part of the.
But at this point,
it's a no-go. It's a no-go. Not even cell phones, those types of things. So, but what the cool thing is about this is that prior to all of our coverage on last Monday, we built this whole thing up and we put it online. The anatomy of the trial, the different parts, and we still got a lot of stuff that we're going to be throwing out there for that. The bench, we still have a lot of things in there. You get to learn the judge. We're going to introduce the prosecutors, the defense attorneys. You get to read about
our
these
legal
folks.
analysts.
Our legal analysts that are joining, and we've got more that we're vetting to join on the bench. That's too. Awesome. So, I mean, this is it kind of came out with the juror yesterday, the potential juror. She got struck. She's not a part of the panel anymore, but she was like, the show's fascinating. We're putting information out there that people can actually understand and they can relate to, because we're giving it to them on their platforms.
And that platform can be accessed right there. You take your phone, you pick your phone up, you scan that QR code, and that QR code will bring you to the bench and all of our coverage as part of this series continues.
And Zach, I mean, and you mentioned it with Joel at the end of the video there. We want the comments.
Yeah.
What are we saying that you may not understand? Because that is a key to helping us give you what you need as we go through this trial. This trial is expected to go through the end of June. I mean, we got a month and a half of stuff to cover.
Yeah. When do we anticipate the official trial will start? The beginning of June?
Well, the final strikes will come on May 31st. May 31st. So the judge is hopeful that we can start this case on the 5th.
Okay.
And then we'll take the entire month to go through the case, and it's all in the jury's hands after that.
Okay. Well, Jason, we so much appreciate you waking up early, coming in early to chat with us. Again, utilize that QR code on the bottom of your screen. You can read Jason's daily updates from court on our website. We also have story archives to help you catch up on AJ Armstrong's first trial. That was back in 2019, his second trial in 2022, plus the first full installments of The Bench that we streamed live last week. You'll find it all on our website, clicktohouston.com/thebench. Jason, thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
Thank you very much.